Okay, we can start. We can now start the meeting. So, good morning and welcome to this licensing subcommittee hearing. Present, we have myself, Councillor Mike Bland, chair of the panel, along with councillors Harry Mackenzie, Andrew Harvey, and Peter Old, who is our reserve. Today. Also in attendance are Brian A. Williamson, the licensing officer, and Peter Key, our legal advisor, and Andrea James, Democratic Services officer. So just a few points of housekeeping. There is no fire alarm planned for today, so should the fire alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit, either the door behind the glass screen to my left or the double doors behind you to the riverside. Please do not use the doors to my right, as they are currently not in use due to the building work outside. For guidance on making your own recordings, please see the notices in the agenda for this meeting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and may be available to view in live and archive form from via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you where to sit. Okay. In that case, I'll move on to the agenda, and the first item is apologies for absence. Andrea, do we have any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Second item, substitute councillors. Andrea, do we have any substitutes?
No substitute, Chair.
Third item, has any member or officer a declaration of interest to make? No interests to make. Item 4 is minutes of previous meetings, and I'm simply going to ask that we confirm these minutes of previous meetings by general assent. Do we have general assent? Yes, we do. Okay. Item 5 is the order of business, so I will explain that the order of business on page 22 of the agenda will be followed for this meeting. So that's basically the order of business, and we're starting with item 6, which is the main item for today's meeting. Under the Licensing Act 2003, application for variation of a premises licence for Captain Jack's 55 Central Parade, Herne Bay, CT6 5JG. I wish to confirm that in addition to the panel and Canterbury City Council staff, the following people only are entitled to speak at this hearing. That's the applicant, Mr. Nejmi Hassan, representatives or witnesses of the applicant, of whom there are 2 here, I believe. Those who have made a valid written representation or are representing such a person, and there is a list of other persons. And I wish to note that anyone representing an other person must limit themselves to the contents of the other person's written representation. No new evidence or claims can be brought at the meeting. So I'm going to start by asking the licensing officer, Brian E. Williamson, to introduce the application. Brian E.
Thank you, Chair. So today we're here to discuss the application to vary a premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003. The application was submitted by Mr. Nejmi Hassan for Captain Jack's in Herne Bay. So the detail of the application, application is to extend the opening hours of the premises, to extend the playing of recorded music inside and out, provide provision for late night refreshment, extend the hours for the supply of alcohol on sales only. Off sales is to remain as per the current hours. So there's a list on the report of the current hours versus the hours that have been applied for. The main difference is for the Friday and Saturday night, where the opening hours are extended from 1:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. And the supply of alcohol is the main difference is Friday from midnight 45 is extended to 2:30, and on Saturday the same times, midnight 45 to 2:30. Recorded music again is extended on the Friday and Saturday nights from midnight 30 to 3 a.m. and the provision of late night refreshment again Friday and Saturday from midnight 30 to 3 a.m. So a summary of the application, as mentioned, the extension of the existing licensable activities, and Appendix A contains the full application, the current licence and the plan. So as mentioned, excluding off sales of alcohol, which will remain the same. Just to highlight on the application form, the declaration box at the end of the form had not been checked, but the applicant has subsequently confirmed by email that he agreed to the declaration. The applicant met with Kent Police, Environmental Health and Licensing Enforcement, where a number of conditions were proposed by the responsible authorities, and these were all agreed by the applicant and can be seen below and in Appendix D. So there's a list there of agreed conditions. I won't read them all out because it's quite lengthy, but hopefully everyone's got a copy of those. They were all agreed to. So under the core hour policy, the application to vary the licence does include hours that are outside of the core hours. So they would be 2.5 hours later than the recommended core hours on a Friday and a Saturday. So that's just to highlight that. There's some more information within the report about the hours on the policy. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to read it all out. And the reason for calling the hearing, obviously, is because we have received representations. So no representations were received from responsible authorities. A number of representations were received from other persons. So we had representations from 12 residents and 1 residential development company, which mainly or partly relate to 1 or more of the 4 licensing objectives. And I'd just like to highlight at this point that the representation number 10, which is from the residential development company, we were notified late last night that they wish to withdraw their representation, so we can't consider that one today during the hearing. The licensing subcommittee are required to evaluate each representation in accordance with the licensing objectives. Does the relevant representation address an adverse or a positive impact on the licensing objectives? And it's worth noting that this is an application to vary an existing premises licence. Only matters applied for within the variation can be conditioned or amended. Anything already granted cannot be changed at this hearing. The subcommittee must have regard to the application, the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, any relevant case law referred to and any relevant representations, Article 6B of the European Convention on Human Rights, Section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, and to take such of the following steps as it considers necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives. So the choices are to grant the application with additional amended times, conditions, etc., or reject the application. I've listed the licensing objectives, but I'm pretty sure you all know them fairly well. And then there are a number of appendices which are all within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, this is a point at which we look at the application, and we also consider other persons who have put in written objections, and some of those other persons who have put in written objections are here present and would like to speak. So the order is going to be, I'm going to ask Mr. Hassan to formally put the application to us in a moment. After that, the panel may ask questions of Mr. Hassan. If responsible authorities had put in any representations, they would then have the opportunity to ask the same, but no representations came from responsible authorities, so that would move on to other persons. And in respect of other persons, just to say at this point, I've got a list here which includes Mr. Khalil Ahmed, and I believe he is here represented by consultant Mr. Hopkins, and also Linda Potter. Yes. Okay, and so we would then at that point go to, you would have opportunities to put questions at that point. Other people who are present who have made written representations, those are considered as written representations, but just to clarify, we understand that you don't wish to speak at the meeting, but we have taken on board those written representations which we've already read. So given that that's the procedure, and just to make clear as well, in respect of the panel's questions, we may ask questions of the police who didn't make representations, but actually did suggest some conditions on this. And also, so we have Sergeant Peter Ballard from the police here, who's not going to speak, but the panel may wish to ask questions of the police, and we will do so if we consider that's necessary. And also the City Council Licensing Enforcement Officer, Diane Attenborough, is also here, and likewise we may ask questions of Diane Attenborough if we feel that's necessary to help us come to our considerations and our conclusions. So just to be clear, that's the way we're going to manage this in this meeting. Okay, so we're now at the point at which I'm going to ask Mr. Hassan to formally make his application. So over to you. If you wish to press the little button that's got, that's it. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for listening to this application. As Brian has highlighted, it's quite a straightforward application. It's a simple extension of hours from 1:30 until 3 a.m. on a Friday and Saturday only. Captain Jack's is open is licensed to be open 7 days a week. However, we don't want to bring the other days into consideration. It's only on a Friday and Saturday.
Can I suggest you move the microphone a bit closer to your mouth? So yeah, that's good. Sorry. Carry on.
So the application is only for the Friday and Saturday, and there are several reasons that I'll go into as to why we believe that the application should be granted, and why it would be in the public interest to do so, taking into consideration the licensing objectives. If I could start at the beginning, though, because I think it is important that the committee have an understanding of Captain Jack's, the business that we run and how we operate. So my brother, who sits beside me, he's the designated premises supervisor. He has been since the 16th of May 2018, which is when the first premises license was applied for and granted. The property itself, 55 Central Parade, was purchased the year previous. It's next door to a business that we already own and run, and it seemed a sensible move at that time to purchase the property next door. We tried various different businesses within that for the first year of operation, but being 7,000 square feet on the ground floor and another 6,000 square feet on the upper floor, it was very difficult to make it viable and to pay the bills, the council tax, the ongoing utilities and everything else. So we ran indoor markets, we ran a whole host of different events from there for a year or so, but it became a loss-making operation. One day, myself and my brother, while sitting out the front, decided that because of the location, because we was very close to the sea, that there was an opportunity there to open a daytime bar, going on late into the evening, but I believe the first application was only until about 11 o'clock in the evening. And that's when Captain Jack's was born. So originally it was a small operation. It housed about 30 members of the public, and we had outdoor seating as well. The rear of the property was used as a martial arts gym, and that's where lessons were given to the kids in the community. However, unfortunately, COVID came along, and they were unable to maintain that business. So at COVID time, obviously everywhere shut down, bars, clubs were shut down, and the martial arts gym gave their notice that they wouldn't be reopening as they couldn't afford to financially. Now, during the year or so period pre-COVID that we had been running it, Captain Jack's was hugely successful. It wasn't something that we had anticipated, to be honest with you, but it was effectively a victim of its own success, and that's the point that we've got to today. So it seemed sensible during COVID to use the time to redevelop the rear, which was being used as the martial arts gym, and to expand the size of the bar. Obviously, premises license variations are applied for and granted. We've never had any problem dealing with either the council or the police when applying for premises licenses or variations at Captain Jack's. There's no cause for concern on their behalf. So post-COVID, the venue reopened and now houses approximately 200 to 250 people should we wish to do so. Mr. Chairman, committee, you've seen the location. It's very, very secluded. It's on the seafront. We face the sea and we face the car park. To our right, we own the property all the way around from 54 all the way around to 47. We have no neighbours, therefore, to the right. To the left, there's a development plot. That's been a development plot for the last 5 or 6 years now, and no moves forward have been made to redevelop that plot, although I understand that there is an application in process. I should point out that we've already purchased 3 of the units within that development plot, and therefore we're not going to do anything at Captain Jack's that might prejudice our investment next door. And I understand that the developers withdrew their objection last night anyway, so that's not really a consideration. Therefore, we don't have residential around us. We're secluded and we're out of town. I think that's the most important thing. We're out of town. A lot of the statements that I'll come on to refer to us bringing the wrong kind of people to town, into town. We're not in the town. Our business allows customers to come and leave without having any influence whatsoever on the town. So the closest residential to us is a block of apartments. I believe there are 12 apartments in the block, the Bunpenny apartments. No objectors from there. Therefore, when it comes to nuisance in terms of the licensing objectives, I can't see a nuisance, and no one's come along and made a representation as to that. The next thing I'd like to go on to, because of the way in which the objections are written, there's a definite attack on the character of myself and my brother within those objections, basically saying that we're unfit and unable to run a good operation. Well, Nejmi Hassan, 49 years of age. I'm a qualified lawyer, and I've been an alcohol license holder since the age of 19. That's 30 years of experience as a license holder. My brother, 46 years of age, he's a license holder of 25 years. We've been partners for the last 30 years in business, and we run many, many, many licensed premises from London down through Kent, Sittingbourne, and in Herne Bay. Between us, we have 55 years of experience of running and owning licensed premises. I'd like to think that we know what we're doing. I'd like to think that we run a good operation. We're both married. I have 3 boys. My eldest sits next to me here. And my brother has two children, 18 and 13. We're both upstanding members of the community. No criminal convictions, never been arrested, never been accused of even the most minor crime. And we both have clean driving licenses despite driving 120 miles to work and back on a daily basis. That's 6 days a week. I'm actually in the process of applying to become a magistrate, given my legal background. And in doing so, I'm required to be an upstanding member of society. I'd like to think that we both are. Both very high on morals, and We drink only socially, and we've never been involved in the use of drugs or anything like that. It's just not what we do. And yeah, we don't like to be around it. And again, there's a lot of reference to drugs and the such like within the complainant statements. Honestly, quite offensive to read some of these statements, especially as we have been in the town and in Herne Bay. We've run businesses from Herne Bay for 30 years now. And we've always made a point of not getting close to other people or allowing other people to kind of get close to us, to influence us. So people don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to us. This is the first time that we've spoken publicly. And so anything that's said about us is pure speculation. We don't drink in other drinking establishments. We don't go to other drinking establishments. There are owners of other venues here today. I've never met the owner of the other venue. I've met his son, and that was only in January of this year, and I'll go on to explain how that came about. But we don't mix. We travel to work and we travel home again, and that's it. So yeah, because of the allegations and assertions made against our character, I think it's important that the chair know that. So what I would say is, since Captain Jack's opened in 2018, I would say that we've had very little, if any, incidents. There are incidents of note, and I'll refer to 3 incidents of note. However, generally, for a business that's been operating for 8 years on a prime seafront location, with day trippers and a very, very busy location it can be, where we have 100, 150, 200 guests Friday, Saturday nights, I'd say that it's been one of our least troublesome venues. As I say, there have been incidents of note, but we'll come on to that. So we have 11 or 12 representations. I don't propose to, but I will, if need be, go through each one.
You don't need to do that at this stage.
No,
you can
thank
do
you.
that at a later stage if you just carry on with making your application. Okay.
Thank you. So if I just, as a broad comment, I would say that the objections in themselves are very generic, repetitive, and I can say with my legal background that 95% of the contents of those statements would not be admissible in a court hearing, as they are purely hearsay. What I want to look at today are the facts, not he said, she said, or what's been passed around. I want to look purely at the facts. As I said, I'm a qualified lawyer. I therefore have a professional duty not to mislead in any way whatsoever, along with my moral duty, of course. So we need to remember, when we move on to examining the statements, that the objections to grant or vary the premises can only be made in light of the 4 licensing objectives. Economic factors are not to be considered. 4 licensing objectives: public safety, prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. As I said, I will go on to, if need be, but when the time is right, into each objection, and I'll state how I don't feel that the licensing objectives have been referred to or are applicable. I maintain on the facts that there's absolutely no concern for Captain Jack's to be granted a later license. I actually believe that it's in the public interest, and I believe that it reinforces the licensing objectives for Captain Jack's to do so. Let's make it very, very, very clear from the outset that neither the police, Canterbury City Council, the environmental protection have objected to our application. Since 2018, we've worked very closely with them. We have a fantastic working relationship with them. Never once have they asked us to do something that we haven't done, and whenever they've suggested conditions, we've always been the first ones to accept conditions. Exactly what happened on this occasion. We approached the police and Diane at licensing before any application was made. We said, guys, how do you feel about this application? They said, we need to have a meeting. We had our usual meeting, and they suggested conditions that they would be happy with. So based on those conditions, we immediately accepted, and with no objection from the police, licensing or environmental health, they would be the ones to raise objections if there were any concerns. They have the facts, they have the records of complaints, they have the records of calls to the police that would be made if there was a nuisance. They have no concern. And let's be honest, if the variation is granted, the conditions on our license will be tighter than ever before. So there are various conditions that they've asked to be included, which is 2 CIA for definite. At the moment, it's just based on a risk assessment. So were we to believe that a Friday night may not be busy because there's an event going on in Canterbury, we could, if we wished, carry out a risk assessment and assess no need for CIA. No, not now. Now we will have to have a minimum of 2. Not that it's a concern, because we've always had 3 on a Friday and predominantly 4 on a Saturday. So since Captain Jack's opened, even in 2018, we've had CIA on the door, and we've had more than the need be there. So no concerns with the conditions that they're asking us to impose. Another one, the 1 a.m., no re-entry after 1 a.m., that's absolutely fine. We have no intention of trying to draw people to our premises after 1 a.m. That's not the intention of this variation, and it's not the intention to go on later in the evening. The intention is that, as I started off by saying, we are a victim of our own success. We're very, very busy. And the problem now is that the hours are too short. When we get to close time, 12:30, we have 150 members of the public that we have to deal with. And to get them all out in one go is not easy. It can be done, but it causes a huge gathering outside. What then happens is, because we're closed early, these people want to continue the party elsewhere, and they'll go to another venue. What that causes is the herd mentality. So you have all of these people together that are required to depart and go down. The council define it as a red route. They take a specific route to get to the next venue. That's where there could be a nuisance. There could be people that may get rowdy with one another. What we want to do is, we want to avoid that. We want a dispersal policy whereby between the hours of, say, 1 to 3, they're able to vacate at their leisure. They can. What we found is that 1's a bit too early, but by 2 o'clock, the customers would normally have left, and they may then turn left rather than right because they don't want to go on to the next venue. They've had enough by that time. And so they disperse one by one quietly, without the usual that we have, which is where you switch the music off at 12:30 because you have to, and then they get upset. They want one more, and it becomes difficult getting them out. So this is, the application is not, make it very, very clear, the application is not for us to open until 3 a.m. That's not the idea here. The application is so that we can disperse our customers between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. safely and one by one, without the herd mentality. And I mean, if I can quote the council's own licensing report, the local authority, as do the residents, recognise that the vast majority of licence holders operate safe and professional establishments, but the problems are caused by large numbers of people migrating through the city to different establishments. That's what's current. That's the current problem. I mean, they've absolutely nailed it there. 1 o'clock comes and they all migrate to the next venue. That's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah, the problems are caused by large numbers of people migrating. That's what our application is to overcome. Yeah, large numbers of people walking along red routes. There's clearly a red route in Herne Bay. So our application overcomes this problem. It's not to stay open till 3 a.m. We probably won't even be open after 2 a.m. anyway, because that's when most people would have dispersed. And I want to make that very, very clear. There's also an additional problem that we face, which is that our every move is being monitored, watched, and we're quite literally under a fine microscope as to how we operate, when we operate, and what we do. And by this I mean operating hours, complaint after complaint after complaint. And these are for sometimes the most minor of things which The police make it clear the police have never taken any action against us. We've never been fined, reprimanded, anything like that. Licensing, same again. No fines, nothing at all. But what does happen is we continue to be flooded with complaints, occupying both the police's time and Diane's time, and then occupying my time. This week alone, I probably spent about 4 hours on CCTV to justify how I operate and run my venue through totally unjustifiable complaints that are coming through, and I'm proving to Diane that they're unjustifiable. If I say anything wrong, Diane, please feel free to interrupt me. So what this does is, because we're so restricted that we have to turn the music off, for example, at 12:30, we have to stop serving alcohol at 12:45, it allows us a bit of flexibility to ensure that we're not in breach of our license. Yeah, we do not wish to breach our license, and this allows us that flexibility. Because, and I'll refer to one incident which happened in January, whereby a local DJ booked the venue to celebrate his birthday party. Now, the DJ was allowed to use the decks, the music system. He was allowed to play his own music. It was an exceptionally busy evening. We had probably about 150 to 200 guests come along, all invited because he was a local DJ. Now, he was told of the rules, and they became really hard to enforce at about 12:30, because the party was a great party, no trouble, but the party was in full swing. When our door staff asked him to turn the music off at 12:30, he played one more. It was pure peer pressure caused by his group of friends that were inside of the venue. We were then reported for playing music beyond our 12:30 hours. The doorman and myself, actually, I was part of the decision-making process, considered it far safer to allow one more song to be played, on the understanding that it would just be one more, and then the customers would leave safely, quietly. But one more became two more, and I think we went about, I can't remember, Bryony will know better, but it was about another 30 minutes beyond our hours. Now, I'm not going to say it was unintentional, it was intentional. And the intention was to ensure that we didn't have any incidents of public disorder within the premises. There were none, it was a great party. We should have applied for a TENS, but we didn't realise just how popular this DJ was. So eventually at 1 o'clock, the music was switched off. Everyone left, no cause for complaint, no concerns, no trouble. So effectively, in safeguarding the public and in making a managerial decision to allow the music to continue in the interests of public safety, we breached our license. We were then required to spend lots of time providing CCTV evidence and the such like. And to be honest with you, we held our hands up. We didn't deny it. We didn't contest it. And we explained the reasons why. And when we explained the reasons why, both the police and licensing were understanding. We weren't reprimanded. There was no need. It was a decision made. So additional hours would allow us that flexibility, being such a popular venue, to be able to manage the customers without having to worry consistently, are we breaching this? Are we breaching that? Are we 10 minutes over here? Are we 15 minutes over here? The 3 a.m. gives us plenty of time to manage the venue, manage the customers, and ensure that they depart safely. So that's another big reason for it. I think one of the last points I'm going to mention is, again, there's a bit of an attack on character in terms of greed. A few of the witnesses refer to it as a money-making exercise. If it's some, our number one priority is public safety. It's nothing to do with money. We had an event 2 weekends ago where we had an outdoor summer party. We had the same event last year. We had the event this year. We sold 250, well, the promotions team sold 250 tickets. We then agreed to move the party inside at 10 o'clock. The event started at 12 and it was due to finish as per our license at 1 a.m. I was there. At 12 o'clock, I decided to call it a night. We had 250 people inside the venue. If it was a pure money-making operation, I certainly wouldn't have closed the doors. But I took the view that from 12, they'd been drinking from 12 till 12. It had run incident-free, trouble-free, and we actually had a visit at 10 o'clock by licensing by Diane, who was stopped at the door herself because we weren't allowing new customers in. The doorman thought that she was a new customer, and they stopped her and refused her entry, and I had to explain that she was with me and she was coming out to carry out an inspection. She carried out her inspection. She didn't see anything wrong. In fact, Diane commended the whole running of the operation. So yeah, it was about 12 o'clock. One of my doormen said to me, Nedge, it's very full up. We've been going since 12. How do you feel about calling it a night? And that's exactly what we did. At 12:15, music went off. At 12:30, we were out of the premises, locked up, and I was on my way home. Unfortunately, what happened after that was that we were then accused of having a fight inside Captain Jack's at 12:52 a.m., which spilled out of Captain Jack's and into the street. The CCTV showed otherwise. The CCTV showed that we had locked up at 12:30 and that we were all on our way home. So there are people out there that are trying to put things on us that simply are not true. So again, I say from a greed perspective, this is nothing to do with money. I mean, touch wood, we're successful enough. We have enough money. We don't need to stay open an additional hour to make more money. We're good. So that was something that I thought was important to mention, and also the assertion, which is a continual theme, that whatever goes wrong or happens in Herne Bay has come from Captain Jack's. It's absolutely ludicrous. We're open 2 nights of a week, Friday and Saturday. That's it. I mean, we open our doors at 6. We probably don't get customers until later on in the evening. We used to get customers from about 7 o'clock. That's now a thing of the past because another pubs recently changed hands, and they're doing a really good job. And a lot of our customers now go there and they come to us at 11 o'clock when that pub closes. So economically, they've taken from us. I've not made a complaint about it. I've not tried to say that they're unfit. So they're running a very good operation. Good luck to them, you know. And now our customers come to us at 11, and between 11 and 1, we're busier than we ever have been. And that's the reason for the variation, to ensure that we're not in breach and to be able to disperse our customers as per the council report, as per licensing's own report, which advises on how you should disperse. And that's what we're going along with. And yeah, we are, as Bryony said, we are applying to trade outside of the core hours and for an extension outside of the core hours. And the policy says that it's not policy to refuse applications for hours longer than the core hours, and consideration will be given to the individual merits of each application. So I know that consideration will be given here. I think this is a very fair environment. And I'd like to stop now. But I would like to once I hear the representations or objections, I would like to answer those, please.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a full explanation in terms of putting your application, and I certainly didn't want to shorten it because I think you wanted to make a full explanation of it. Application. What happens now is that the panel can ask questions of you, and we will start doing that. And after the panel have asked questions of you, that's the opportunity for the other persons and to also ask questions. And it literally is a question of asking questions at this point. So we'll start. And I'll start by asking the first question. Just explain to me, as briefly as you can, exactly what amount of security you currently have, and what kind of additional security will you have were you to be granted this application?
You may be surprised to hear there will be no additional security because we're already running at maximum security. We always have done since Captain Jack's opened. Even in 2018, when we first opened the doors, we had 2 doormen at that time. We now run 3 doormen on a Friday and 4 doormen on a Saturday. I think that's more than enough. And the doormen, I should mention, they travel down. 2 of the doormen travel down from London specifically, because we didn't want them to be colluded by locals, which is sometimes what happens. They know friends within the local community and they let them in with certain items or whatever else. We didn't want that to happen. We originally had that, if I'm honest with you. When we first opened, we learned our mistakes, and the 2 doormen now travel down from London on every weekend, Friday, Saturday. The other doorman, the 3rd doorman that we have, is the same doorman that then leaves our premises and goes to Vivid. So he's the same guy, Bailey. He works for us and then goes on to the other night venue in town. And the 4th doorman, yeah, he's qualified as well. He's local, but he's new to the community, and so he's not colludable. Yeah, so that will continue. There will be no change to that.
Okay, so these are all employed by yourself. They're not part of a separate security company.
No, because we only open weekends. They have their own jobs during the week, but then they're qualified CIA.
Okay, so just give me an idea what kind of equipment do they have in terms of communication and so on and so forth.
So every person when they enter is wanded with the wand to make sure they're not carrying any metal. They're patted down, bags are opened, pockets are emptied. In addition to that, we have cameras on the fronts. They have walkie-talkies, which they sometimes use, they sometimes don't, but the cameras are worn all of the time.
And if an incident were to occur, how quickly are they able to contact the police?
To be honest with you, our policy states that if as soon as there's an incident, the manager, whoever's on at the time, we have 2 managers, they should be notified immediately, and it's them that contact the police, not the door security, because the last thing we want is the door security on the phone to the police while they're trying to deal with an incident.
Okay, so the door security are for managing safety at the venue, and if there was an incident, that would be reported to somebody else who'd then contact the police.
Yeah, the bar manageress there are 2 security stood at the front door and then 2 at the back that patrol the rear area. Okay. Between the 4 of them, the bar is immediately in the middle, and that's where the manageress stands immediately by the front door, but has access to both. So she's the point of call for the police. She'll make the call.
Okay. Next thing, can I clarify? Yours is a bar. It isn't
Correct.
anything else.
Correct. We have 4 iPads and we have waitresses. So whilst we do serve at the bar, we don't encourage service at the bar. We have a waitress that goes round and takes iPad table service.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, you have DJ music in there, though.
Of course.
Yes. Right. Okay.
We saw the booth this morning. We saw areas that could be used as a dance floor, which we're not supposed to have dancing as such. So you've seen tables have been placed in those areas to try and prevent that. But the honest truth is, if people are going to dance, you can't really stop them dancing.
Okay. All right. Well, you've preempted what I was going to ask. So
you can't stop that.
You've answered that question. Okay. The music, I guess, can get quite loud in a bar with that kind of fun atmosphere, if you wish. Do you have soundproofing at the premises?
Yes, we do, because the upstairs Talk of the Town was a nightclub. Upstairs was Talk of the Town, which was a nightclub historically. That was all soundproofed through so it wouldn't affect the downstairs business that was being run by the same brothers at the time. So there's soundproofing upstairs. There's also soundproofing between the floor of the upstairs and the downstairs.
So it's fully soundproof, the whole building?
No, it's not fully soundproof. Just the upstairs to downstairs is. The walls as such, no, because to the left, it's our property anyway. It's our cafe is next door, and we close that before Captain Jack's opens. There might be a crossover from 6 till 9 in the evening, but their music's not very loud at that time. And on the other side, it's just an empty development plot anyway, so there's no need for soundproofing of the walls.
Okay.
And we've not had any complaints of noise.
Right. If okay, so in terms of just remind me, what if you were to be granted extra hours? What would you say would be the last time that somebody could enter?
1 a.m. That's
1
a
a.m.
condition of the license. It's one of the conditions that's been imposed.
And the entry point is through just one door? Is that only one door open at the front of the property?
Usually that is the case. In winter, most definitely. In summer, when it can get very hot in there, and so the doors will be opened. But we have barriers on either side, as you saw this morning, which kind of funnels them in so that they don't miss security, so that security can check them.
Okay. So, the barriers are, you're pointing like this.
Either side
So they're either side
of the entrance door.
You
Yeah.
don't widen that in the summer when you've got the doors open?
Yes, we do.
You do?
We do.
Okay.
But there's a condition that's been imposed by Environmental Health now, if this goes through, that after a certain time, all of the windows, I think it's 11 o'clock in the evening, all of the windows and doors will be closed. So
Right.
that, again, that's a more stringent condition than what we've been subject to up until today.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all the questions I've got for the moment. So, Harry, do you have any?
Can I please ask you to clarify how many customers do you generally get in your bar when it's open, and like what is the limit on your premises? And like when your bar is, like you're having a busy evening, does your security have the ability to easily move through the bar to get to an incident, or do they get blocked by customers like standing in the walkways drinking?
So in terms of how many customers do we generally have, it depends. I mean, this weekend, Saturday night, the boxing was on. So we were not busy whatsoever. We closed early this weekend. I think about 12:30 we closed this weekend because it wasn't busy at all. There are other evenings when they'll decide, when generally it's like they kind of, the public talk to each other somehow, and all of a sudden they just appear. And on a good evening, we can have 100, 150. We've been known to have 200. How many does it hold? 250. And can the doorman move through? Of course, because that's their job. It's to ensure that the premises are not overwhelmed with people, and that they can get from front to back. It's also why we have 4 security. So we have 2 in the front section and 2 in the back section, because if something was to happen at the back, you wouldn't want the security at the front to have to wade through the people to get to the back. It's immediately dealt with by the guys at the back. So it's set up in a way that both the front and the back can be managed.
And when we was on the site visit earlier, I noticed you've got that bit off to the left as well. So you've got the back, you've got the front, and you've got the bit where the swings are.
Yeah.
Do you have, does the security have good vision and good access to that corner as well?
Yeah, good question. The bit at the back widens, so that's why we have 2 security. We have one looking up on the DJ side, and we have one specifically for that side. There's also a fire exit down that side that you may have noticed. So if anything was to happen, the fire exit door can be opened, and we can get them out of the premises immediately without having to go through the people or through the public. There's also another fire exit at the rear of the property, which again leads out to the back car park. And so we can, if need be, remove customers straight through the back, again, not having to go through the front. So there are 2 ways out from the back where customers can be taken out if need be. But to be honest with you, it's not something that we've ever really had to do. We don't get trouble.
Councillor Harvey?
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you. Just like a bit of clarification really on the management of the outside area where you've got the tables and chairs to the front. I know it's your existing condition, but obviously it affects how the place is run and its impact on the neighbourhood to some extent. You've got a condition that the tables and chairs are made unusable from 10 o'clock, I believe. So how do you do that? And does that work okay? And also there's another condition that drinks must be decanted into non-glass after 10 o'clock when people are going outside. I'm a bit confused as to why anybody would be going outside if that space is unusable. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, and of course. So basically the doors are open. As I said, it gets very warm in there in the summer. And generally you're on the seafront. People like to be out. There's the view, there's the fresh air. You don't want to be in a dark, dingy environment when the weather's nice. So in terms of decantering, it's always been a policy since day one that we opened that there are no glass, this is our own policy. It's not a licensing condition, but after 9 o'clock, there should be no glassware outside. So in terms of decantering into plastics at 10 o'clock, that condition was put on there, and that was my suggestion to put that on there, and was happy to agree to it because we have that policy in place anyway. Now, in terms of management of tables and chairs, this is really difficult. It's very difficult because the tables and chairs, it's not a policy for us. It's the whole of Canterbury has the same policy, which is that tables and chairs shouldn't be used after 10 o'clock in the evening. So our tables and chairs are there. They shouldn't be used, but ultimately people will use them to put drinks on and the such like. And it's very difficult to manage and control that. I mean, the tables and chairs come in at the end of the night. There's nowhere to put them as such, especially on a busy evening. There'll be nowhere to put them. So they do stay out after 10 o'clock, which is allowed. I mean, the licensing know about it. Diane said they can stay out as long as they're not used. And Bryony said we have to bring them in the evening, which is fine, which is what we've been doing. But that's more of a pavement license issue as opposed to a licensing issue. And you're quite right to bring it up. It's very difficult to manage, but we try our best.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, one other thing one other point, which my brother reminds me, is obviously you said, why would people want to go outside? Well, that's for smoking. So, yeah, I'm not going to try and say that most people don't go outside. Most people do go outside. There's probably more people outside. And that's why when we made our original application, we licensed the first metre of the pavement itself as well. So the first metre of the pavement, I think it's just 1.2 of the pavement, actually has the same, it has the same rights as whether they were inside or outside.
Okay, thank you for that. We don't have any more questions at the moment, but of course more might happen later. But this is the opportunity for people who have made representations to actually put some questions to you as well. So I'm going to take it that Mr. Ahmed, you're represented by Mr. Hopkins. So, Mr. Hopkins, would you like to ask questions of the applicant at this point?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to ask Mr. Ahmed, not at this stage, thank you.
Okay, right. So, Mr. Ahmed, do you want to make any questions? Right. Okay. And Ms. Potter, do you want to ask any questions? Okay. I think at this point, then we're moving on to item C on the agenda, which is about responsible authorities. And as I said, as there are no representations from responsible authorities, this part of the agenda doesn't apply. So this is actually the point where other persons may actually, make their main representation at this point. So I think basically, Mr. Hopkins, this is your point now to make your representations.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm actually representing Mr. Ahmed to my right and Ms. Whitehead, who sits behind me. I'll just make one comment in reply to something the gentleman said earlier. Hearsay, of course, is admissible under the Licensing Act 03, provided it's got some evidential basis. Our clients have a licensed premises in Herne Bay. You've had that implied. But I'll make the point clearly that their representations are not based on trade need. They're talking about incidents that have occurred and where they get involved later in the evening, but they're not talking about the need for another venue. That's not part of their representation or part of their submission to you. So these representations they've made and the other residents have made are, in my opinion, 20 years of doing licensing, valid representations. I'm going to just highlight some of the points that Mr. Ahmed has made under the Prevention of Crime and Disorder and Public Safety, near fatal stabbings. There's two I found myself on KM websites, one in 2023 and one in 2024. I'm not saying that the other venue, Captain Jack's, was directly involved, but they started outside that venue, which suggests that people may have been there. That's for you to decide when you're looking at them. But he mentions the machete attack. That was an awful occasion in 2024. The gentleman was seriously injured. I have the report from the newspaper, should you need to see that. Mr. Ahmed mentions various fights on and off the premises, both during the day and night. Disorder while operating events on the grounds next to them owned by someone else. I'm not going to mention the next point because I think it's out of date. It's issues like that. Now, Mr. Ahmed's son is the DPS at their venue, and he is over there. He did put in a witness statement yesterday, but I'm not sure if I can call him as a witness. He sees a lot of what goes on because he's there every Friday and Saturday. Their venue is open on the same days to a later time. But basically, I mean, if you want to hear from Mr. Nathan Ahmed as the DPS of their venue, the impact on my clients is the fact that later in the evening, when Captain Jack's closes, as it does at the moment at 1:45, a lot of the young people are going to their venue and trying to get in. Now, Mr. Ahmed and Miss White have made it plain in their representations that the time the youngsters get there, they are intoxicated, heavily intoxicated, many of them. Mr. Ahmed Jr. questions them as to where they've come from, and regrettably, they always say, I'm not saying we're commenting on whether it's true or not, they always say they have come from Captain Jack's. The time span, if they're getting to, I'll have to name the venue, if they get to Vivid at 1 o'clock and they've come from Captain Jack's and been asked to leave, then they close at 1:45, that time span would tie in that they are coming from that venue. We also know, having talked to the lady in the takeaway next door to Vivid, it's the only one I understand in Herne Bay that's open late, that the same youngsters go in there and tell them that they've come from Captain Jack. So they're heavily intoxicated. Mr. Ahmed, as the DPS, asks them for ID when they get to try and get into Vivid. They've not got ID with them. That's the issue we find concerning, that they've come from somewhere else, allegedly, intoxicated. They do not have ID. So how can the other venue have done Challenge 25? We are questioning that they don't. In addition to that, it's just concerning that these people, it's an offence, as you know, to sell anybody alcohol to anybody who's already intoxicated. They're clearly, if the allegations are true, they are selling it to people when they're already drunk. They don't get drunk between walking out of Captain Jack's and getting to Vivid. They're drunk when they leave the other venue. They shouldn't be served. As soon as they're intoxicated, they should not be served. That's the allegation that we're saying. I'll refer you to page 54 of the papers, Annex 2, the general statement at the beginning of Captain Jack's licence. The premises will be run primarily as a bar with food and snacks also being served alongside the alcohol, but ancillary to it, and the premises will have a community commitment, family orientated feel with safety as the primary objective. Now, clearly, if they're closing the cafe next door, which is to understand where food is available, that food is not going to be available at 3 o'clock in the morning if they get the extension. So the whole concept on the licence will have changed. It's not going to be, I would suggest, a family-oriented feel when it's just a bar. More of a nightclub, I would say, but certainly a late-night destination venue rather than a family place. Not only that, they've got a condition on the licence, I think it's condition 10 at Annex 2, children under 17 have to be off the premises by 9 o'clock. So it's not family friendly. I would say that leads us to the allegations that are in my client's statements, representations rather, that there is underage drinking going on. They're turning up at his venue with no ID and they're already drunk. They then get aggressive at Vivid or in the takeaway next door, and you know we have issues with the door staff at our venue, which is unfair on them. I would ask you to bear that in mind. They're both here, the two owners of Vivid, and the DPS is there, so they can be asked questions if you feel that's appropriate. I can confirm that Mr. Ahmed and Ms. Whitehead are at Vivid every weekend, so they have seen these things, heard them themselves, and they can bear witness to that. our concerns are twofold: underage people drinking and people who are drunk being served. Our view is that, and our submission to you is that if that's going on now, by the time we get to 3 o'clock, that's an extra 2.25 hours of drinking. The comments made in the application are, by the gentleman, are that if the people are contained at Captain Jack's, they'll go home more peacefully. I would suggest the opposite is true. If they're drunk at 1 o'clock and they're drinking till 3, they're going to be more noisy, more aggressive, and more importantly, if we've got young people involved, young women, more vulnerable. So it would be nice to know what sort of training is being put in place, like wave training, vulnerability training, to protect vulnerable people. Also, what checks are being done for drugs? Because it's mentioned in my client's representations that the people often appear to be under the influence of drugs. What checks are being applied to ensure they're not? I can assure you the door staff do that at Vivid. I've actually represented Mr. Ahmed for something like 15 years, so I know that they do these and been there before. They do checks for knives and weapons, other sorts of weapons and drugs. We've got, as I say, I've found a couple of incidents. A nice young man here who stabbed somebody outside the venue. That was in 2023. Oh, sorry, I understand. He was in. We understand that this guy had been in Captain Jack's. It's not anything we've invented. That was printed off yesterday from KM News.
Yes, at the moment, our legal advisor wishes to make a point here.
It's Mr. Hopkins.
Yes.
So I accept this is not a court of law, but some principles of natural justice or procedural fairness must apply. And you are making very serious allegations about drugs, about an injury that you understand happened somewhere. But you declined the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. And in a court of law, you've gone completely wrong, because you are now presenting things you should have given the applicant an opportunity to comment on. You should have said, do you see this photo? Was that caused in Captain Jack's? Do you understand the point I'm making?
Yes.
So why did you not put these questions in fairness to the applicant when you had the opportunity?
As I said, I'm only making the points that my clients have made.
Sorry, I missed your answer.
I'm only making the points that my clients have made, basically, in their representation. They have put the points on
Yes, but
paper.
whether your client has told you to make it or not, of course you're only making points that your client has instructed you to. That doesn't affect at all what I've just said. If you have serious points like drug taking, underage drinking, and this photograph of an injury that may be associated with Captain Jack, why on earth didn't you put these as questions to the applicant? In any civil court, you would be barred. A judge would have stopped you by now and said, you can't possibly raise these points because you haven't, in fairness, put them as part of your case.
I accept your point.
So you have no response?
No, I mean, I could have, I suppose I could have put them to them, but
Well, I'd have to advise the committee later that your failure to put these to the applicant when it was your opportunity to ask questions grievously undermines every single point you've been making for the last 10, 15 minutes.
I must say, in 20 years of doing this, I've never had that put to us in. You usually do it in the same way. You're
Well,
the
I'm
first lawyer
talking
to do
about
it.
procedural fairness.
Fair enough, you've made your point.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hopkins, if you just allow me to confer with our legal advisor for a moment.
Yes, of course.
Okay, we'll continue. After a discussion, I think our legal advisor has made the position fairly clear. These kind of questions that these allegations that you've been making as part of your representations could have been put to the applicant at the point at which you had the opportunity to ask questions, which would have allowed the applicant the proper space to respond to them. So you haven't done that. So as a result of that, I don't think the panel wishes to hear any more of this kind of allegation. You've made the allegations. We've heard your allegations, but we will take advice about due process, as it were, in terms of, you know, the rights of the applicant as well as your rights as objector. We'll bear that in mind when we come to our decision making. But do you wish to make at this stage any other points about the application without referring to newspaper articles and all the rest of it and so on and so forth?
May I just ask the client? I think, Chair, we'll just rely on the representations from Mr. Ahmed and Ms. Whitehead and the statement that Mr. Nathan Ahmed put in as the DPS.
Okay, Mr. Hopkins, you've made reference to something which I believe was submitted late last night, which is actually after our deadline. So I'm going to ask our legal advisors to explain the situation about what the panel can do in respect of considering that.
So the position is that if an other person wants to make a relevant representation, they must do so in time. And the time for doing so expired some weeks ago. The statement that was sent in last night has the flavour of a relevant representation because it seeks to persuade and refers to the licensing objectives. And for that reason, it should not be accepted as a relevant representation. On the question of witness evidence, the code for licensing, which is Canterbury City Council's own code, which is available online as an appendix to the council's constitution, does under 5.4 say that another person, which is what you are representing, Mr. Hopkins, may call upon a witness to make a solely factual statement. And I would expect that to be something like, on this date, at this time, precisely this event occurred. But then it continues, this is subject to giving appropriate notice to the licensing officer served adequately in advance. And the practice is, with late representations certainly, to publish them as a supplementary report. Now, your client has known for weeks about this hearing and leaves it until 10 o'clock at night, the night before. And I would say that that breaches the hearing regulations about information or documentary evidence, which should be supplied in advance if it's to be considered. So my advice to the subcommittee would be that that statement can easily be categorised as a relevant representation, for which it is far too late. If you wanted to argue that it is witness evidence, well, it fails because it seeks to persuade by reference to the licensing objectives, first of all, and secondly, it has not been supplied adequately in advance, so that neither the statement nor should be admitted, nor should the person who made it be allowed to be called as a witness, would be my advice to the committee. But obviously you can respond on those points I've just made.
I don't think I'd have much success against your lawyer, because, I mean, at the end of the day, Chair, to be fair, you're going to take his advice. You have to. I appreciate that. We will just rely on the representations. The points have been made that I was trying to reinforce. The points are made in their representations, and as far as we're concerned, they are factually correct.
Okay then, so you have nothing further to add at this stage?
No, based on the points we've made, we believe it is wrong for the extension to be granted, because it will just push it back to later in the night.
Okay, thank you for that. I think, just hold on a second. Okay, we're going to move on to the next part in the process, which is in the order of business. But before that, I am going to ask a question of the responsible authorities who are present. So I am going to ask Sergeant Peter Ballard of the police, as well as Diane Attenborough of the City Council Enforcement Officer in this respect. Do either of you have any factual reason for being concerned about how Captain Jack's is being managed since under the current licensing conditions.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So, no, my position is overseeing licensing matters for the whole of Kent. So the actual licensing officer for Canterbury can't be here today. But we do discuss licensing matters in and around Canterbury, in and around Herne Bay, and nothing has been brought to my attention. As with every application that is received, it is diligently gone through and discussed with any applicants in relation to any concerns that may be raised, where we can look at potential changes to what is being proposed, which has been done in this case. One thing I do need to clarify is simply that in relation to the comments made for the events on Sunday the 12th of January, which was around the licensing hours where they went over. It was suggested that there wasn't any actual action taken by us, but there was. We did issue a formal written warning in relation to that. So I just wanted to clarify that point. But other than that, no, we don't have any concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms Attenborough.
Yeah, I am the Licensing Enforcement Officer for the Canterbury District. I've worked with the Hassans for over 20 years now. I work very closely with the police licensing, and whenever we put suggestions to them, they listen, they take on board, and I have no issues. We met with them, they understood what we required, they understood the reasons. I have no objections, I've had no issues with them.
Okay, thank you both for that. That's helpful information for the panel. So we come now to item E, which is basically the applicant has the right to summarise, and I emphasise the word summarise, the application. So, Mr. Hassan, would you like to summarise your application?
Thank you. Yeah, I will be brief. So basically, in conclusion, go back to where I started, which is that the contents of the objections that were put forward, the 13 objections, I said at the outset that 90% of them would have been inadmissible and were based on pure hearsay, and that's exactly where we've kind of ended up. There's been no factual evidence at all. I apologise to the officer. We did get a written warning, but not a fine or anything like that. There's so many positives that I could talk about in terms of the job that our CIA do. Diane sits there. She knows about comments that have been made to her, commendations from the public. I'd also say Danny, the licensing officer, we worked with PC James Gould. He was always so supportive because we were able to supply so much CCTV evidence to police in terms of incidents that occur elsewhere, because something will happen elsewhere and the go-to place is then Captain Jack's for a drink. We were able to provide evidence on what clothing they're wearing, what time they arrived, what time they left. And this has helped the police non-stop solve problems elsewhere. And we'll continue to do that and work closely with them. Just this week alone, I've provided two separate officers CCTV evidence. And what I would say is our staff predominantly, most of them all hold personal license, are all personal license holders. We pay for that and we put them on the courses. Our door security have personal licenses. Everyone knows what they're doing. They're trained. And that's that. I mean, there's reference to incidents, and it seems like the evidence of that is from newspaper articles. So since when did we start believing the press? I don't know, but that's not really my problem. That's all I have to say, really. I think I've said more than enough. You know,
Thank you very much.
Honestly, I just think this has become a bit of a mockery of the system, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for summarising your application. Okay, we're now going to retire to consider the application and all the representations that have been made in due time. And we'll then reconvene and give our decision. Hold on for a moment. I'll tell you how roughly what time we'll come back. Okay, we're going to retire for. We'll be back here to give our decision at 12:15. Okay, or maybe just a little bit later than that. 12:45. We're just waiting for the live streaming to come back on. Okay, so welcome everybody back. The panel's retired with our legal advisor, and we've considered our decision. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the applicant putting his case for the application, and particularly for all the people who have made representations. Thank you very much for coming along and making those representations as well, both in writing and verbally. We have considered all those representations and all the information available to us in the report, and as the case has been put to us today. The panel notes that there have been concerns raised, and we've considered those concerns, and what we find in terms of our decision is that there is a lack of evidence to back those concerns. That's our finding. The lack of evidence is such that we've asked the police if there are concerns from the police around this application, and the police have indicated that there aren't any concerns around the venue in terms of this application. Other than that, one warning letter was issued in regard to going over hours, current existing hours, at one point, which the applicant has accepted was the case as well. Our own licensing enforcement officer has also similarly indicated no concerns about in respect of this application. So on that basis, it is the panel's decision to allow the application with some additional conditions which have been indicated in the report as asked for by the police and our enforcement officer, also in respect of environmental protection type indications. I'll make one. There will be one additional condition in respect to the issue about outside music. That must stop at 11 p.m. There can be no playing of music outside the venue beyond 11 p.m. So our decision is to allow the application on this basis. Our legal officer, Peter Key, will speak about the details for that, but I'll make one point. What we've heard is that part of the reason for the application is to promote staggered dispersal. It does seem to the panel that staggered dispersal, even after extended hours, makes sense. So what I would ask the applicant to do is to ensure that there is indeed encouragement for staggered dispersal in the additional hours, because if there was staggered dispersal from the venue, it would indeed avoid some of the problems that have been concerns of people in the locality. So with that proviso, I'm just going to ask our legal officer, Mr. Key, to actually explain in detail our decision. So, Mr. Key.
So under the Act, under sections 34, 35 and 36, there has to be a notice setting out the decision, but the decision is announced now, and there will be a decision letter which gives a fuller account of what I'm now saying. This is an application for a variation of a premises licence made by the applicant, Mr. Nejmi Hassan. The premises are Captain Jack's at 55 Central Parade, Herne Bay. The variation application is made under section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 and determined under section 35 of that Act. There was a site visit at 9 o'clock this morning, attended by members of the subcommittee, the licensing officer, myself and the applicant, and then the hearing started at 10:30. The subcommittee had before it the licensing officer's report and appendices, which are pages 23 to 75 of the agenda pack. This is published online on the Canterbury City Council's website, and that's made up of the licensing officer's report, which was presented earlier by my colleague, the licensing officer. Then there's the application, the license plan, photographs of the blue notice, copy of the newspaper notice, and then relevant representations made by 13 other persons, as they're termed under the Act, one of which, that of Grace Rogers, has been withdrawn. So all of this has been considered by the subcommittee, including at the end of the report pack an email from Kent Police recording conditions agreed between the applicant and Kent Police, CCC Environmental Protection and CCC Licensing Enforcement. The essence of the application was to seek extended hours for certain matters on Friday and Saturday, hours open to the public, extending from 1:30 to 3, on the sale of alcohol from midnight 45 to 2:30 in the morning, recorded music, the end time from midnight to 3 a.m, and the provision of late night refreshments similarly from midnight to 3 a.m. The subcommittee decided to grant the application for the hours sought, subject to the conditions that had been agreed with the police and the council's licensing enforcement and environmental health officers. With regard to the 12 remaining objections in the other person's relevant representations, the only person to actually present relevant representations was the gentleman represented by Mr. Hopkins, namely Mr. Ahmed, Carl Ahmed. The subcommittee were not persuaded by these relevant representations because they were very general, they lacked detail, there was no hard evidence, no specific evidence to support the incidents. Yes, it was accepted that there was a police warning earlier this year regarding playing of music beyond the permitted hour. However, that wasn't considered sufficient on its own at all to refuse this application. The subcommittee were also influenced by what the police and the council licensing enforcement officers present today said when questioned, that they had no concerns about the application or the running of the premises. And indeed, as the chair of the subcommittee has said, they see the good sense of staggered dispersal. With regard to recorded music, the subcommittee would wish that this ends outside at 11. It's not a live and recorded music are not regulated activities between 8 and 11 p.m. They only need a license after 11. And this wasn't mentioned during the hearing, but if the applicant has anything to say about that, I'd invite him to say so now.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. One principle of a variation hearing is that the applicant can't go out of the door worse off than he came in unless he's agreed, and the conditions, including the 11 p.m. for recorded music outside, are agreed, I take it.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you. So all of this will be set out in a letter which records the decision and gives notice of the decision, which needs to go to the applicant and to all those who made relevant representations. Lastly, I have to advise everyone, all parties present, that there's a right of appeal. It exists under Section 181 of and Schedule 5 to the Licensing Act 2003. There's a very strict, inflexible 21-day appeal limit, and the appeal is made not to the council but to the Magistrates' Court. And I think that concludes matters.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Key, for explaining that in detail. And again, I just wish to thank everybody here in terms of the applicant and other persons here. So yes, you're free to consider those hours apply from this point, even though you may actually get the decision letter in a few days' time. Your application for the variation is basically with immediate effect. I do wish other members of the local community do see the benefit of staggered dispersal over time, and that there is a better relationship around all of that. So many thanks for everybody for your contribution and helping the committee come to a decision on this application. So I wish you all well and farewell.